It was one of those Fridays that felt like a small gift from the universe. My last client canceled, so I shut my laptop earlier than usual and leaned back, letting the silence settle. For once, I wasn't exhausted or rushing. I thought, maybe I'll surprise David. He believed I'd be home late, so the idea of catching him off guard, in a good way, made me smile. I could already picture his face when I walked through the door with dinner plans and that soft bottle of red he liked. The drive home felt easy, almost cinematic. The sunlight hit my windshield just right, and I found myself humming to a song we used to dance to in our kitchen, back when things still felt spontaneous. It had been a while since we'd done that. Lately, he'd been working late, and I'd been pretending not to notice. But that afternoon, I wanted to believe in the simple version of us again. No distance, no tension, just warmth and routine. Then I saw it. The back door, slightly open. At first, my mind refused to register it. Maybe the wind, maybe he was home early too. But the air felt different, charged. My heartbeat picked up, thudding so loud I could almost hear it in my ears. Something wasn't right. I parked quietly, not even closing the car door all the way. My instincts told me to move softly, to listen. The afternoon light stretched long across the lawn as I crept around the side of the house. Every sound felt amplified. The rustle of leaves, my shoes brushing the grass, my own shallow breath. Then I saw her. A woman I'd never seen before, slipping out through the back door like she'd done it 100 times. She moved fast, clutching her purse and coat like she had somewhere urgent to be. I froze, caught between disbelief and anger, watching as she bent down and lifted the mat, our mat, and slid something underneath. The gesture was practiced, familiar. I stepped forward before I could stop myself. "Excuse me," I called out, my voice shaking. She stiffened but didn't turn. "Hey, who are you?" I shouted again, louder this time. She muttered something I couldn't catch, then bolted down the alley, her heels clicking against the pavement until they vanished into silence. I rushed to the mat, my hands trembling as I lifted it. And there it was, the spare key, catching the sunlight like it was mocking me. That small, shiny object felt heavier than anything I'd ever held. My throat went dry. The truth hit me in one sharp, merciless thought. She knew where it was. He gave it to her. I stood there for what felt like forever, the key still glinting in my palm. The world around me seemed to quiet down. No birds, no cars, just that thick, suffocating stillness that comes right before something breaks. My chest felt tight, my pulse quick and unsteady. I wanted to scream, to demand answers from the empty air, but instead, I just stared at the house. My house. The one I'd built with laughter, grocery lists, and Sunday mornings that once smelled like pancakes and aftershave. Inside, everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. His jacket hung by the door. The faint scent of his cologne still lingered in the hallway, and I hated that it felt like comfort. I walked into the kitchen and placed the key on the table, like it was evidence in some crime scene. Maybe it was. I kept replaying the image of her face, blurred, nervous, guilty. And his. How many times had he looked at her with the same softness he once reserved for me? By the time the sun dipped below the trees, I knew one thing. I couldn't unsee what I saw. The back door was still ajar, the air still cold. I sat down at the table, staring at that little piece of metal, and waited. If he had the courage to give another woman a key to my home, then he'd better have the courage to walk through that door and face me. When I finally heard his car pull into the driveway, my hands went cold. I didn't move. The spare key sat in front of me on the kitchen table, catching the soft light from the window like a quiet accusation. I'd rehearsed a dozen ways to ask him, to trap him, to make him confess. But when the door opened, all I could do was look at him. He walked in smiling, like everything was perfectly normal. "Hey, babe, "You're home early," he said, setting his keys down. "So was she," I answered. My voice didn't even sound like mine. Calm, flat, controlled. The smile faded from his face, replaced by that cautious, nervous look men get when they sense they're one question away from disaster. "What are you talking about?" he asked, pretending confusion, as if he hadn't already felt the floor shift beneath him. I nudged the key toward him with one finger. "The woman who left through the back door," I said. "The one who hid this under the mat. You know, the mat that's supposed to be our secret." His face drained of color so fast it almost made me pity him. Almost. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. "I can explain," he finally stammered, but I cut him off before he could spin one of his practiced lies. "Then explain," I said, my eyes locked on his. "Why a stranger had access to my home, my life, and my husband." The words came out steady, almost too calm, and that scared him more than shouting ever could. He ran a hand through his hair, buying time, searching for an excuse that would make betrayal sound reasonable. "She's just a friend," he said, voice trembling slightly. "She stopped by to talk about something." I almost laughed, that hollow, bitter kind of laugh that leaves your throat dry. "A friend who hides keys under my doormat? Or one who leaves before your wife gets home?" I asked, leaning back in the chair. Silence filled the kitchen, stretching thin between us like glass about to shatter. His eyes darted to the window, to the floor, anywhere but me. In that moment, I realized something cruelly simple. Silence is an answer. He didn't deny it because he couldn't. Every second he spent not speaking confirmed everything I feared. The woman, the key, the secrecy, all of it. My hands trembled under the table, but I didn't let him see. "You betrayed me, David," I thought. "And you let her walk right through my door." He finally sat down across from me, elbows on the table, rubbing his temples like he was the one in pain. I watched him carefully. Every twitch, every sigh. I'd known this man for over a decade, and yet in that moment, he felt like a stranger wearing my husband's face. "Hannah, please, it's not what you think," he murmured, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him more than his words ever could. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The air between us felt heavy, filled with everything we'd both left unsaid over the years. The missed calls, the quiet dinners, the lies that started sounding like routine. He tried reaching for my hand, but I pulled back. "Don't," I said softly, and the single word landed harder than any scream. For once, he didn't push. Maybe he finally understood that something had broken beyond repair. He stood there, waiting for me to yell, to cry, to forgive. But I stayed silent, because this wasn't the moment to fall apart. It was the moment to start paying attention. As he walked away, I looked at the key still on the table. It glinted in the light like a dare, like a promise. If he had secrets, I thought, I'd find every single one of them. The days that followed felt like walking through fog, thick, heavy, disorienting. David acted as if nothing had happened, kissing my cheek in the mornings, texting me sweet nothings like a man rehearsing normalcy. I played along. I smiled when he smiled, asked about his meetings, and packed his lunches like the dutiful wife he expected. But inside, something fundamental had changed. I wasn't his partner anymore. I was his observer. I started noticing things I'd once ignored. Gym bags that smelled like perfume, receipts tucked away in his wallet for dinners I hadn't attended, sudden showers the moment he came home. Every lie began to leave a trace, and I collected each one quietly, like breadcrumbs leading me to the truth. I wasn't even angry anymore. Not in the loud, burning way. My anger had cooled into something far sharper. At night, when he drifted off beside me, I'd stare at the ceiling and replay that woman's face, Chloe. I didn't know her name yet, but her image stayed with me like a watermark I couldn't erase. If he gave her the key, I thought, what else had he given her? My heart still ached, but beneath the ache, something else began to grow. Resolve. By the third night, curiosity had turned into necessity. While David slept beside me, I lay awake counting the seconds between his breaths. When his snores finally deepened, I slipped out of bed as quietly as I could. The glow from his laptop still pulsed faintly on the desk. He'd fallen asleep without closing it. My hands shook as I opened the lid, not from fear of being caught, but from what I might find. His inbox loaded slowly, almost teasing me. Then I saw it. A name that made my stomach twist. Chloe. I clicked, and there it was. An entire thread of messages, each one more intimate than the last. Can't wait to see you again. Use the key if I'm still at work. She'll never come home early again, don't worry. Every line felt like a knife, slicing through whatever innocence I still had left. I sat there in the dim light, reading and rereading until the tears stopped coming. The ache was still there, but it was different now. Hollow, precise. I printed the emails one by one, each sheet sliding out of the printer like evidence in a trial that hadn't yet begun. I slipped them into an envelope and labeled it in bold letters. Insurance. The next morning, I looked at him differently. Same man, same smile, same coffee mug. But now every gesture felt rehearsed. Every "I love you" sounded like a line from a cheap script. He talked about his work trip coming up, about how he'd miss me. I just nodded, keeping my voice soft, my expression neutral. Inside, I was already somewhere else, planning, calculating, reclaiming control one silent thought at a time. I spent the rest of the day in motion. I made copies of the emails, stored them in my office, and even sent a few to a private folder online. I wasn't going to confront him again. Not yet. The next time he saw my anger, it wouldn't be in my voice. It would be in my actions. There was a strange peace in that realization, a cold steadiness I hadn't felt in weeks. That night, I watched him sleep. The same man who once whispered promises against my neck now lay there, unaware that I'd finally seen who he truly was. I thought about Chloe, the woman with my key, my trust, my place. And as I turned off the light, one thought echoed in my mind like a vow. If he gave her access to my home, I'll show him what it feels like when the door locks behind him for good. When he told me about his work trip, I didn't even blink. 3 days away, he said. Meetings, networking, the usual. I smiled and played along, even reached across the table to squeeze his hand. That's fine, I told him softly. I might visit my sister while you're gone. He looked relieved, almost grateful, like a man who'd just been given permission to sin without consequence. Good idea, he said. You need a break. Oh, I did, just not the kind he imagined. The morning he left, he kissed my cheek and promised to call. I waved from the porch until his car disappeared, then shut the door and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. The house was silent, but this time it wasn't suffocating. It was liberating. I brewed myself coffee, walked through each room, and started removing pieces of my old life one by one. If he wanted a double life, I'd make sure one of them disappeared. By afternoon, I had changed the locks on every door and window, except one. The back door, the one she used, the one he gave her. I placed the spare key back under the mat, exactly where she'd find it. Then I stepped back, studying it like an artist admiring her own work. For the first time since all of this began, I smiled, not out of joy, but out of certainty. That night, I parked my car a few streets away, hidden under the shadow of an oak tree. The air was cool, and the streetlights flickered like nervous witnesses. I checked my watch, 8:52 p.m. My heart beat steady, Not from fear, but anticipation. Every sound felt sharper: the hum of distant traffic, the occasional bark of a dog, the soft rustle of wind against the leaves. When the headlights finally appeared, I already knew it was her. Chloe. Her car pulled up to the curb like it belonged there. She stepped out gracefully, confident, unaware. I watched as she looked around, then crouched down to lift the mat. The key was right where I'd left it, glinting under the porch light. She smiled. I saw it, that small, satisfied smile, before slipping it into the lock and letting herself in. The audacity almost made me laugh. Almost. 5 minutes passed. Then came the scream. Sharp, startled, echoing through the quiet street like a fire alarm. I leaned back in my seat, watching as the house lights flickered on. She'd expected warmth, maybe the scent of him, maybe the life she'd stolen. But she found something else. Emptiness. No furniture, no clothes, no photos. Just the hollow bones of what used to be our home. I waited a little longer, just to make sure she saw everything. Through the window, I could see her silhouette moving frantically from room to room, trying to make sense of it all. The walls were bare, the floors empty, and every trace of us was gone. I'd taken everything that carried meaning, every photo, every reminder of the life they thought they could share behind my back. All that remained was the echo of what they destroyed, and one small, deliberate message. On the kitchen counter sat a single framed photo of David and me, taken years ago on a vacation he probably forgot. Below it, a note taped carefully in place. Hope the key still works for you. I could almost imagine the way her face must have changed. The confusion first, then the realization, then the sting of humiliation. The same sting I'd felt the moment I saw her walk out my door. I didn't wait to see what she did next. Some victories don't need applause. I started the car, the engine humming softly beneath my hands, and drove away without looking back. The night air felt crisp, clean, like freedom finally had a scent. By the time I reached the main road, I wasn't thinking about Chloe anymore. I was thinking about him, about the moment he'd walk into that hollow house and realize what it feels like to lose everything. He came back 3 days later, whistling. I can still picture it. Him walking up the steps with that easy confidence, suitcase in hand, believing life would just pick up where he left it. But the moment he opened the door, everything inside him must have stopped. The echo hit first, that hollow sound when there's nothing left to absorb it. No furniture, no laughter, no trace of me, just emptiness and the faint smell of fresh paint. On the kitchen counter, I'd left 2 things: a neatly stacked pile of divorce papers and an envelope. Inside were the printed emails. Every promise, every lie, every digital fingerprint of his affair. I'd underlined one line in red ink: "She'll never come home early again." I imagined his face as he read it, the way his smile would dissolve, the way his breath would quicken. He'd realize the woman he thought would never fight back had already won. Later he called. I didn't pick up. His voice went to voicemail, pleading, frantic. "Hannah, please, we can fix this," he said, but the message felt hollow, like the house he'd ruined. I saved it, not because I cared, but because sometimes it's good to keep reminders of what survival sounds like. He tried calling again, 10 times, maybe more. Each voicemail blurred into the next, a chorus of apologies and empty promises. "You misunderstood. It didn't mean anything. Please, we can start over." But there's no way to rebuild a house when the foundation's already turned to dust. I'd given him the chance to tell the truth, and he chose lies instead. So I chose myself. And this time, I wasn't going back. My lawyer handled everything cleanly, efficiently, like slicing through old rope. I gave her the envelope with the emails, and she barely had to say a word. The evidence spoke louder than any story he could spin. A few weeks later, I heard his company suspended him for violating workplace policy. Apparently, sleeping with a colleague, especially one you give a spare key to, doesn't sit well with management. Consequences, finally catching up. The thought didn't bring joy exactly, more like closure. I didn't dance or celebrate, I just breathed easier. I stopped waiting for his name to appear on my phone, stopped checking the door expecting him to walk in. The silence he left behind no longer felt empty. It felt earned. When the final papers were signed, I didn't cry. There was no dramatic goodbye, no moment of hesitation, just a quiet sense of finality, like closing a book I'd outgrown. I remember walking out of the courthouse and feeling the wind on my face, cool and clean. For months, I'd been living inside a storm of betrayal and anger, but that day, it felt like the clouds had finally cleared. I didn't need to forgive him. I just needed to move on. He sent one last message, long and desperate, saying he hoped we could find our way back someday. I deleted it without reading past the first line. Some bridges don't burn, they just fade out of reach, swallowed by distance and self-respect. And mine had disappeared long before he noticed. He'd mistaken my silence for weakness, when in truth it was the sound of me rebuilding. I went home, my new home, and poured myself a glass of wine. The city lights shimmered beyond the balcony, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. There was no more waiting, no more pretending. Just peace, quiet, and the faint echo of a door that would never open for him again. It's been months now. Sometimes I still wake up expecting to hear his footsteps in the hallway, the familiar clink of his coffee mug, the murmur of his voice. But the silence that greets me isn't lonely anymore. It's comforting. My apartment overlooks the city, and every morning the skyline reminds me of something I nearly forgot. I'm still here. I'm still standing. I didn't lose myself. I just unlocked a new version of me. Work has been good, better than good. I joined a new firm, one that actually values my ideas. My colleagues laugh with me instead of around me, and the late nights are mine by choice, not by suspicion. I even started painting again. Funny how colors feel brighter when no one's dimming your light. And then there's Bailey, my rescue dog, who follows me everywhere as if he knows he's guarding something precious. Maybe he is. One afternoon, a friend came over and noticed the frame hanging by my front door. Inside it was the old spare key, the one that started it all. "You kept it?" she asked, laughing. I smiled, tracing the edge of the glass with my finger. "It's a reminder," I told her. She tilted her head. "Of what?" I looked at the key, then back at her, and said, "That giving someone access to your life doesn't mean they won't misuse it, but it also doesn't mean you can't change the locks." After she left, I stood there for a moment, just looking at that frame. It's strange how something so small, a key, a piece of metal, can hold an entire chapter of your life. For a while, it represented pain, betrayal, humiliation. But now, it means something entirely different. It's not a reminder of what he did to me. It's proof of what I did for myself. I didn't just survive him. I outgrew the world we built together. Some nights, I sit on the balcony with Bailey curled at my feet, watching the lights ripple across the city. There's a quiet power in knowing I rebuilt my life from the same place he tried to break it. I used to think revenge was about making someone pay, but it's not. It's about reclaiming every piece of yourself they tried to take. About walking away, not wounded, but wiser. I glance once more at the framed key as I turn off the lights for the night. And in that stillness, I can almost hear the echo of my own voice, calm and certain. He thought the spare key was his way in. Turns out it was my way out.